Hey guys, welcome to the first Q&A I'm doing on this channel. I'm hoping to make it something more regular. That is, if you guys have stuff to ask me and I have stuff to talk about. So let's get started. Emily B asks, are you working on any more original songs right now? Yes, but sporadically. I've had a really long, busy semester, so I'm a little exhausted, and with the push of the second EP, I'm a little creatively brain dead as well. But I'm hoping that the holidays will let me kind of ease back into writing and sit down with the things that have happened in my life and try to articulate them. Megan asks, how did Icarus evolve? How did Unwind? Icarus had one of the most interesting evolutions of the songs in the EP, just because it was a very different beast when I brought the first draft to my mentor than when it emerged from the studio, you know, fully fledged. I think it was kind of a series of opening myself up. It just became more and more honest as the revisions went on, and I was happy about that just because I think that song really needed to get at the marrow of things, and I don't know, I think it did, and I hope you think it did. As for Unwind, that was actually the other end of the spectrum. It kind of tumbled out of me in a couple of hours. It just kind of went onto the page in a good way. I think it was, you know, a very natural feeling that inspired the song, and so the song kind of just came out sounding natural and it flowed very well. But I just want to say that's very lucky. A lot of songwriting is about sitting down with something and really working on it and making it come alive, and things that tumble out onto the page are not very common and are lucky, so, you know, you gotta put in the work. And how did you schedule time for NaNoWriMo in November? For those who don't know, NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month. This past November was my 3rd year participating, and I think, like songwriting, writing is the same way. You really just have to make the time. You have to sit down and say, I'm gonna do this and nothing else for 2 hours, because, you know, the more time you have, the less you're gonna get done, I promise. So you really just have to say, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna make the time. Jessica asks, how old were you when you started to sing, play, and write? How was that, and what were your difficulties? Singing definitely came first. My parents like to say that I was singing before I was talking, so that gives you an idea. Then writing, probably. I was 12 or 13 when I started writing songs. They were terrible, don't worry about it, they will get better. And then playing guitar came last. I was probably 14 or 15 when I started learning. In terms of difficulties, I think my greatest difficulties came, one, in singing, because I didn't have a lot of classical training most of my life, and then I learned how to read music, and I learned some musical theory and did some, you know, classical choir, and I think that grounded me. And then playing guitar, I think that was tricky because coming from a vocal standpoint, learning another instrument was really, really hard. But, you know, you just really gotta work at it, like everything else. Elizabeth asks, who else has supported you on your journey so far, and what are your biggest inspirations? I've been really lucky to have a lot of support across the board. My family is incredibly supportive. My friends are really great about listening to my music, spreading the word. I've been lucky enough to have some of my friends as collaborators. I have a sound engineer who's my friend. I have a guitarist who's my friend on the last EP. I'm just very lucky to be surrounded by a ton of support. And of course, you guys, I don't even know what to say. You know, I'm so appreciative. I'm grateful for all the support I've gotten. As for inspirations, I think most of you know by now that Sarah Bareilles is a huge inspiration of mine. She's, you know, a dynamic vocalist. She's an incredible songwriter. She's a great performer. I've been lucky enough to see her live a few times. In that same vein, I'm a huge fan of Laura Marling, Ingrid Michaelson, Sheryl Crow, Joni Mitchell. I think just all these women who have carved very specific identities for themselves in music while really maintaining a kind of emotional honesty in their songs. And that's something I really appreciate, and I think seeing that kind of confidence inspires me to become more confident in my own musical voice. Samantha asks, you've mentioned that neither piano nor guitar are your first instruments, so what other instruments do you play, and what was your first instrument? I think it's pretty obvious by now that voice was my first instrument. That's just what I meant, is that I'm primarily a vocalist, not an instrumentalist. In terms of other instruments, I can play, you know, 4 or 5 chords on the ukulele. I can hit a tambourine. I can try to slap at a cajon. But, you know, I pretty much stick to voice, guitar, and then a little bit of noodling on piano. But that's it. Nora asks, which song off Something to Win was the most fun for you? The most cathartic? The hardest to write? The most fun was definitely Love Like LA. I went to California for the first time last December, and it was, you know, for an East Coaster, just a huge eye-opener. And I actually started Love Like LA driving up the 101, which for those of you who aren't familiar with California is kind of one of the most beautiful coastal drives I've ever been on. And the song sort of just started coming out, and it was, you know, more of an expression of love than a kind of, you know, emotional wrestling, which is most of my music. So it was a nice little break, I think, and that's something I want to do more often. The most cathartic song to write, I think, would probably be Nevermind. Just because I was actually thinking of putting it on the last EP. It's an older song, and then it ended up kind of not fitting with the feel that I wanted for that first EP, and I revisited it coming back to this second one and tweaked it and really finished it in a way that gave me more emotional closure. So I think coming back to that, sometimes, you know, you just have to take a new approach to things and it comes out better. As for the hardest to write, I think that would be Icarus, again, because it was a very difficult topic for me to deal with. You know, it was just this really hard winter that I had, and I wasn't really sure how to articulate it, and it took months, really, for that song to come out, but I'm glad it did, because I think it really needed that time to be that honest. Emily G asks, New York to Paris is a big change. Do you think Paris will change your sound? For those of you who don't know, I'm going to be spending a few months in Paris in the spring. I think definitely Paris is going to change my sound. I just don't know how yet, but I'm definitely going to be listening to new music over there. I'm going to be experimenting with some writing in French, which I'm not all that confident in, but I know some people are going to be very happy about that. So, you know, it's going to be an adventure, and I'm sure you guys will see some of the results of it. So that's all the questions from this first Q&A. Thank you everybody who asked questions. I hope I didn't ramble too much and, you know, you actually found it interesting. And I look forward to putting out some more music and hopefully answering more of your questions later. Okay, bye.